This is one of those I said something a lot of people didn't agree with and now need to reinforce my arguments kind of videos. In the Why Readers Will Hate Your Novel video a few weeks ago, one of the things I said would make people hate your novel is that it doesn't stand on its own. I got quite a few comments about this, and I want to go through this concept again just to clear up any confusion. And yes, I recognize the irony of responding to this issue in a separate video, which implies that the other video didn't stand on its own, but whatever. Speaking of standing things, if you can stand me and want to see more of this kind of video, consider making a stand by subscribing to my channel. You won't be on your own because there's a few thousand people who are also subscribed. What I mean when I say a novel must stand on its own is that all of the information the reader needs to enjoy that novel needs to be contained within the novel itself. There should be no external resources, no one that has to explain the story outside of what's actually written down on the page. Now, for something like a series, I would extend this to all of the other books in the series as well. An individual book may require information contained in a previous book, that's fine, but we can still assess whether the series stands on its own because all of the information needed to enjoy it must be contained within all of the books of that series. I think this idea is almost more important as a guiding principle and mentality than it is as a factor of assessment for a novel. If you approach your writing with this idea that every base needs to be covered, that the novel alone is the only thing that can deliver your message, then you are going to dramatically improve the quality of the work. You won't be there to defend the story as people read it. Remember that. Whether you agree that a novel needs to stand on its own or not, when it's being read, it's effectively standing on its own. Now, one complicating factor here, and something that a lot of the commenters mentioned, was this idea of franchises and universes. In that you can have information that's part of a literary universe, which the reader may need to know in order to fully enjoy the novel. But I would argue if there's a piece of information that you need to know from that universe to enjoy a novel to its full extent, and that information is not presented in the novel itself, then it weakens that novel, and that novel stands less on its own because a reader without that pre-existing knowledge is going to have a lower quality experience with it. I read Sanderson's Tress of the Emerald Sea recently, which is a standalone novel set inside his Cosmere universe. I've read a lot of the Cosmere stuff, but I'm far from well versed in all the lore and whatnot of that universe. And I think there were a couple of times in that novel where I was supposed to pick up on things that were Cosmere related, but I didn't. So in spite of the fact that overall it was a fairly decent novel, I got a lot less enjoyment out of it than I likely would have if I was a massive Cosmere freak. The fact that I didn't have certain information going into that novel gave me a lower quality experience with that novel. I wanted to give you some specific examples of this, so I searched for Cosmere references in that book, and I discovered that I missed like 99% of them. So now this brings up an interesting paradox. A novel within a universe that depends on a higher degree of knowledge of that universe may enhance a reader's enjoyment of the universe at the expense of the novel. The reader will be rewarded for their knowledge of that universe because they can make these connections and see the meaning behind hidden Easter eggs within the story. You weaken the novel as a standalone work, but you enhance the universe. I think there's a focus and mentality piece to this. Is your focus on building a literary universe or producing an excellent novel? Moving your focus to the universe around a novel is naturally going to take energy away from the novel itself. You will be less focused on making the novel itself good and be more focused on how it fits within the universe and how it improves the literary universe around the novel. This also applies if your novel isn't part of a literary universe, because essentially every novel is part of some kind of universe. Every genre or setting is going to have background information that the reader may need to know in order to fully enjoy the story. and you can't just assume that every single reader is coming in with the same information. 1970s New York City detective stories are as much a literary universe as the Cosmere is, and you can't just assume that the reader is coming to the novel with this information already in mind. You can't assume that they will understand the difference when a character references Harlem or Midtown Manhattan and all of the cultural, social, economic, and geographic details that could be fueling your story. There is always some kind of pre-existing knowledge that the reader needs to understand in order to get your novel. You are not going to be able to explain everything to them, so you need to make some assumptions here. Different age groups, different cultures, people with different reading histories, people who are more or less familiar with a genre, people who are more or less familiar with your writing, are all coming to your novel with different experiences, and that may or may not negatively affect how they view this specific novel. Your own personal knowledge is going to bias this process in so many ways, so the only surefire way to know if your novel stands on its own is to have someone who's not familiar with it read it, and then see if they grasp everything that they need to grasp in order to enjoy the novel. Usually this is in the form of a critique partner or a beta reader, but your critique partners and beta readers need to have similar knowledge going into the novel as your target audience, your target readers will have, so this is something that needs to match up. One thing that can be really helpful here is giving your beta reader or your critique partner questions that they only see after they've read the novel, because the sort of questions that you want to ask may lead the witness. If someone sees the question, does the butler seem like he's lying, before they read the book, then that's going to affect how they read the novel. It's going to give them some pre-existing knowledge that may color how they see the work. When you're assessing whether your novel stands on its own, it's important that the novel alone is what is being assessed. You don't want to give the beta reader or your critique partner any additional information if you can. Remember, at the end of the day, it's your job as a writer to get everything across the reader needs to know, and your only tool to do that are the words between the cover of your novel. You can't rely on anything else. Any novel that requires previous knowledge, either of real-world elements or an existing series or literary universe, is going to be less enjoyable on some level for some segment of readers. The broadest appealing novels are those that require the least amount of pre-existing knowledge and that convey all necessary information in a self-contained way within the novel itself. Understand that if you make your novel need more than what is conveyed within the novel itself, you may be appealing to a smaller group of readers. There's a smaller group of people who may enjoy your novel. Just like I hope a large group of you enjoyed this video. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this video and found the advice in it useful. If you want to see more stuff like this, you can check out all my other writing advice related videos and subscribe to my channel. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.